Hey TikTok, I'm just on here wondering if anybody's feeling the same way I'm feeling. I'm from Illinois and I feel like the gas prices and the electric bills and the prices of food is just so overwhelming anymore. Like, I'm wondering if anybody else is feeling like they're drowning and they can't get out. I work overtime and I cannot get above water. I mean, I literally have no gas for next week. It was either that or get a few groceries to get by. I hit my local food pantries. I'm just wondering if anybody else feels like they're drowning.
Have you ever stopped to wonder what happens when an entire gender collectively decides they've had enough, packs up their emotional investment, and walks away from the traditional dynamics that held society together for generations? We're witnessing a profound shift right now, one that's reshaping relationships, economies, and even entire nations, and the consequences are unfolding in ways that few saw coming. Stick with me until the very end, because by the time we're done here, you'll see exactly why this trend isn't slowing down anytime soon, and how it's creating two very different paths forward for men and women around the world. If you're getting value from this kind of straightforward, no nonsense breakdown on what's really happening in gender dynamics and the men walking away movement, then hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel and make sure to click the notification bell and select all so you get every single new video the moment we drop it. That way, you never miss out on more great Angry Guy content. Also, if you're serious about taking control of your financial future in these uncertain times, head over to Angry's Crypto Academy. It's the place to learn exactly how to buy, sell, and trade crypto the right way while protecting and growing your assets properly. The link is right there in the description below. So pause this video if you need to and go check it out now. It's completely free to get started with the blueprint, and it can make a massive difference in safeguarding your wealth. And hey, if these videos are hitting home for you and helping you see things more clearly, show some support by buying me a Red Bull through the link in the description. It keeps the energy high and the content coming strong. Appreciate every single one of you who does that. Now let's dive deep into this. Around the world, women are increasingly finding themselves in challenging economic situations, facing rising costs for essentials like food and housing, and sharing their struggles openly on platforms like TikTok with emotional videos that highlight just how tough things have become. At the same time, many of these same voices spent years emphasizing independence and stating clearly that traditional roles involving men weren't necessary. Yet now, as these pressures mount globally, particularly in places like China and the United States, there's a noticeable shift where some are expressing surprise or frustration that men aren't stepping back in to provide the support they once did. Men, however, have been observing these patterns for decades and have made a deliberate choice to prioritize their own peace and self preservation. After years of hearing messages that portrayed masculinity as problematic, that used movements and policies to impose restrictions and consequences on men simply for being men, many have decided that engaging in those old dynamics no longer serves them. Instead, they're building lives focused on personal growth, financial independence, and communities that align with their values. This isn't about revenge or bitterness. It's about recognizing reality and choosing a path that leads to genuine fulfillment. Think about it this way. For half a century, societal narratives pushed the idea that men were the root of many problems, that traditional provider and protector roles were outdated or even oppressive. Policies, media, and cultural shifts reinforce this, often punishing men through legal systems, social shaming, or economic disadvantages. Men were told they weren't needed, that women could handle everything on their own with the backing of institutions and the state. And men listen. They step back, not out of defeat, but out of a clear eyed assessment that continuing to invest in a system that constantly devalued them wasn't sustainable. Now, as economic realities bite harder, With inflation, housing crises, and state budgets stretched thin, some women are voicing concerns about survival without that traditional male support. But men have already moved on. They found that life without the constant tension, the risks of false accusations, the financial drain of unequal relationships is actually calmer, more prosperous, and more liberating than they imagined. This trend is accelerating because men are actively constructing parallel systems that don't rely on the old structures. They're learning practical skills, expanding networks for communication that aren't dependent on centralized platforms prone to censorship, and participating in barter economies where value is exchanged directly through goods, services, and expertise. These systems are designed for reliability in uncertain times. And notably, they're often male centric by default because trust has been eroded. Women, who largely supported or benefited from the systems that marginalized men, now find themselves more tied to those failing structures. The state provisions that are running dry, the corporate jobs vulnerable to automation, the consumer driven economy that's collapsing under debt. Men aren't rushing into rescue because they've learned the hard way that doing so often led to exploitation or punishment. Instead, they're fortifying their own positions, preparing for challenges ahead, and enjoying the fruits of their independence. Recall the popular hypothetical poll that went viral. Would women rather encounter a bear or a random man in the woods? Millions of women chose the bear, signaling a deep distrust or negative view of men as a group. Men took note. They responded not with anger, but with a simple, logical conclusion. If that's how you feel, then rely on the bear for protection and provision. Don't expect men to step up when you've made it clear they're seen as the greater threat. This mindset has spread widely, reinforcing the decision to walk away permanently. Relationships between men and women have been strained to the breaking point, and many men report that severing those ties has brought them unprecedented peace. Some are even embracing celibacy, not as a sacrifice, but as a liberation, freeing themselves from desires that once led to turmoil, manipulation, or loss. They're rediscovering self reliance, building deeper bonds with other men, and channeling energy into pursuits that build real wealth and security. This sounds dramatic at first, men locking women out of society. But when you look at the evidence unfolding globally, it becomes undeniably clear. Men are systematically phasing women out of their personal lives and, as a natural extension, out of the new societies they're building. This isn't confined to one culture or country. It's a worldwide phenomenon that's intensifying. Take the United States as an example. Projections indicate that by 2030, around 45% of women aged 25 to 44 will be single and without children. When you include single mothers in that equation, the figure jumps to between 60 and 70% of women in that age group living without a traditional male partner. That's a staggering shift from historical norms, and it points to a future where the majority of women navigate life without the partnership that once formed the backbone of family and economic stability. Look eastward to South Korea for another stark illustration. Much attention has been given to the 4B movement, where some women pledge to avoid dating, marriage, sex, and childbirth with men. It's often blamed for the country's plummeting birth rate, the lowest in the world. But that's not the full story. The real driver behind the fertility crisis there stems from men's organized responses to feminist pressures. When women complained about persistent romantic approaches being harassment, policies were proposed limiting how many times a man could ask a woman out before it became punishable. Men supported tighter rules, effectively calling the bluff on prolonged dating games that put men at risk. Feminists pushed back, arguing the limits were too strict. but men held firm. In workplaces, accusations of men gatekeeping opportunities led to men openly prioritizing other men for promotions and collaborations, competing ruthlessly rather than extending preferential help. In entertainment, complaints about problematic humor targeting women resulted in men advocating for the removal of all edgy content, leaving shows bland and unappealing, especially since men had already tuned out. These calculated moves by men in South Korea stripped away the advantages women relied on in social, professional, and cultural spheres. The result? Men withdrew en masse from marriage and family formation, cratering the birth rate not because women opted out, but because men did. Similar patterns are emerging in Japan, China, Europe, and beyond. The global fertility decline isn't primarily about women's choices, it's about men's refusal to participate in systems that disadvantage them. Even digitally, men have carved out vast spaces exclusively for themselves. The Manosphere, a network of podcasts, channels, forums, and content creators tailored to men's interests, challenges, and growth, has exploded. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. What started as niche discussions has mainstreamed. Creators who once focused solely on finance, like Graham Stephan, now dedicate significant time to dissecting gender dynamics and advising men on navigating modern relationships. Gaming commentators have shifted from pure gameplay to analyzing how industry trends affect men, with channels like Hypnotic, Smash JT, Yellow Flash, and side scrollers leading the charge. Even unconventional voices, like mathematicians applying logical models to human behavior, have gained massive followings by breaking down patterns in relationships with cold, objective reasoning. Statistically, this withdrawal is evident in dating data. Most young men today are single, while most young women report being in relationships. The explanation lies in hypergamy and resource concentration. A shrinking pool of high status men is shared among many women simultaneously, leaving the majority of men opted out entirely. Approaches, dates, even platonic friendships with women are declining sharply as men prioritize solitude and self improvement over risk. Advances in AI are accelerating this. Platforms once dominated by women for monetized attention are poised for disruption by synthetic alternatives, and young men are already forming emotional connections with AI companions that offer consistency without drama. Men's savings rates are climbing. Their reported happiness is improving, even amid global economic strain. They work strategically, pay the bulk of taxes historically, but as they minimize hours and shift to independent ventures, they're reducing the revenue stream that funds many social programs. Women, who drive the majority of consumer spending, traded individual male providers for collective state provision decades ago. Now, with states facing insolvency and expanding controls to maintain power through digital surveillance, speech regulations, and economic restrictions, women are more exposed to those mechanisms. Men, having been pushed away, are not returning to bail out the system they were ejected from. Parallel economies are flourishing outside traditional frameworks. Crypto communities, skill sharing networks, prepping groups, and barter systems are male dominated and thriving. Men exchange value directly, often excluding or charging premiums for involvement with women to reflect perceived isks and past experiences. Tradesmen report adjusting rates accordingly when dealing with single women, reflecting a broader sentiment. Kindness without reciprocity is no longer extended freely. Men view interactions through a lens of competition now, clearing space for their own advancement. When men do seek companionship or adventure, many travel abroad to regions where cultural values still emphasize mutual respect, femininity, and partnership. Places like Southeast Asia, Latin America, or Eastern Europe. With lower costs of living and stronger purchasing power from Western earnings, they build fulfilling lives there. While back home, industries reliant on male female pairing collapse. Restaurants see fewer upscale dates as men cook at home or eat minimally. Gym chains struggle since men, tired of scrutiny, build private setups or join men only facilities. Nightlife venues fill with groups of women waiting for tabs that never come, as men avoid the scene altogether. AI and automation will displace millions of jobs soon, hitting consumer dependent economies hard. Single men, minimalist and adaptive, weather this better, investing, trading, bartering, while those tied to spending patterns face steeper challenges. Men are wired for survival and provision. Removing the obligation to extend that to ungrateful recipients unleashes their full potential. Decades of accumulated grievances built to this tipping point. From invented infractions like manspreading to weaponized legal systems and family matters, from public shaming via viral recordings to paternity deception and attention seeking chaos, women collectively pushed boundaries until men reached their limit. Men were demonized for natural behaviors, exploited for resources, then discarded. They internalized the message, you're not wanted unless you're useful. So they became useless to that system by choice and discovered abundance and independence. Being alone isn't loneliness when you've made peace with yourself. Men are rediscovering hobbies, brotherhood, purpose. They're shielding themselves from harsh realities they once buffered for others. Daily videos surface of women lamenting unaffordable lives, demanding male return. But men aren't watching. No more dates, no more payments, no more attention freely given. Pattern recognition trumps promises now. Actions speak louder than words ever could. Women miscalculated the depth of male adaptability and resolve. The providers and protectors are gone, building their own worlds. As societal supports fray, men thrive in simplicity, saving, resting, focusing inward. This is the new reality. All paths forward lead to men walking away, unapologetically. Let's keep building on this because the patterns we're seeing aren't just random fluctuations. They're the direct result of choices made over decades that have reshaped incentives for everyone involved. Men didn't wake up one day and decide to disengage on a whim. They responded to a consistent message that their traditional roles were no longer valued or even welcome. When society repeatedly signals that providers and protectors are disposable until needed, eventually those providers and protectors take the hint and redirect their energy elsewhere. The outcome we're observing now is logical. Men investing in themselves, in brotherhood, in systems that reward effort without punitive risks. And as that shift gains momentum, the ripple effects touch every corner of culture and economy. Consider the restaurant sector as a prime example of how these changes manifest in everyday life. Upscale dining, casual date spots, even neighborhood bars have historically relied heavily on couples, particularly men covering the check for dinners, drinks, and experiences. When men step back from initiating those outings, the revenue model takes a serious hit. Industry reports highlight declining foot traffic in segments tied to social pairing, with many establishments pivoting to delivery, takeout, or group events to compensate. Fewer traditional dates mean fewer tabs run up on wine lists, appetizers shared, or desserts ordered for the table. Owners adapt by cutting hours, raising prices on remaining patrons, or closing locations altogether. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's basic supply and demand meeting new behavioral realities. Men cooking at home, hosting low-key gatherings with friends, or simply eating efficiently aligns with minimalist lifestyles that prioritize savings and control. The result? A quieter nightlife ecosystem, one where venues once buzzing with mixed crowds now adjust to different demographics. Gyms follow a parallel trajectory. Commercial fitness centers thrived on broad appeal, but tensions around space usage, perceived scrutiny, and policy enforcement have driven many men to alternative setups. Home gyms have surged in popularity. Basic racks, adjustable benches, free weights, and bodyweight routines deliver results without commute time or membership fees. Invite only or small group facilities cater specifically to men seeking focused environments free from distractions or misunderstandings. These private spaces foster accountability among peers, turning workouts into bonding opportunities rather than potential minefields. Chains dependent on high volume signups feel the pinch as retention drops among core users. Again, this pivot reflects practical choices: peace of mind, cost efficiency, and tailored progress over crowded floors and waiting lines. Nightclubs and bars face similar adjustments. Venues built around attracting mixed groups now navigate evenings with imbalanced crowds, where cover charges and drink minimums don't land the same without reciprocal spending patterns. Economic pressures compound this. Rising costs for ingredients, rent, and labor mean margins tighten when predictable revenue streams dry up. Adaptations include themed nights, live events, or shifts toward daytime operations. But the core challenge remains: social venues designed for pairing struggle when participation in pairing declines. Looking ahead, automation and artificial intelligence accelerate these trends. Job displacement hits consumer heavy sectors hardest, but single men, often living leaner lifestyles, absorb shocks better through adaptability, side ventures, skill diversification, or location independence. And women, more integrated into roles vulnerable to early AI rollout or tied to spending driven economies, face steeper hurdles without traditional safety nets. Men aren't celebrating hardship, they're preparing proactively, building resilience in communities that value mutual support without entanglement risks. This preparation extends to overseas relocation for some. Countries valuing family oriented cultures, respect, and partnership draw men seeking balanced dynamics. Lower living costs stretch earnings further, enabling lifestyles of abundance, quality housing, fresh food, travel, while contributing positively to local economies. Western women, meanwhile, navigate systems increasingly strained by debt and demographic shifts. The state, once positioned as alternative provider, contends with shrinking tax bases as men optimize hours, ventures, and obligations. Programs historically supported by broad contributions face sustainability questions when contributors reassess priorities. Reflect for a moment on the accumulated frustrations that brought us here. Years of narratives framing natural male behaviors as problematic, from seating posture critiques to workplace dynamics, eroded goodwill. Legal frameworks in family matters extracted resources with limited reciprocity, turning partnership into perceived liability. Public shaming, viral recordings, and group vetting apps amplified distrust. Men internalized the core lesson: proximity invites risk without commensurate reward. Walking away wasn't impulsive, it was reason gradual and ultimately liberating. Today, many men report deeper contentment in simplicity. Hobbies rediscovered, finances stabilized, health improved through consistent routines. Brotherhood replaces drama. Purpose derives from self mastery rather than external validation. Celibacy for some transforms from burden to freedom. Energy once diffused, now concentrated on growth. This isn't isolation, it's intentional living, buffered from realities once shouldered alone. Women voicing survival challenges on social platforms highlight the contrast. Essentials feel out of reach without buffers men historically provided. Demands for return echo, but trust rebuilds slowly, if at all. Pattern recognition overrides appeals. Observable outcomes guide decisions now. The divide widens not from malice, but momentum. Parallel worlds emerge, one adaptive, survival oriented, male led, another tethered to faltering structures, seeking rescue. Men thrive in recalibration, saving aggressively, resting fully, pursuing joy unapologetically. Society's old bargains dissolved, new ones form on clearer terms, and as controls tighten, digital oversight, economic levers, independent networks gain appeal. Mesh communication, skill barter, crypto ecosystems operate outside centralized grasp. Men, wired for provision and protection, redirect those instincts inward and toward trusted circles. Women, discovering consumer patterns insufficient for security, confront harsh truths alone. This trajectory holds because reversal requires mutual accountability long absent. Men, having found equilibrium, guard it fiercely. Peace earned outweighs chaos revisited. We stand at a crossroads where one path leads to self reliance and fulfillment, the other to dependency and constraint. All roads increasingly point toward men walking away, not in anger, but resolve. Let's take this even deeper, because the story doesn't end with men simply walking away and finding peace. It evolves into something much more profound: the complete re-architecture of how value is created, exchanged, and protected in a world that's rapidly changing. Men aren't just opting out of old relationships, they're opting into entirely new ways of living that are resilient, decentralized, and built on trust earned through shared values and mutual respect. These new systems aren't waiting for permission from crumbling institutions or approval from outdated cultural norms. They're already here, growing quietly but powerfully beneath the surface. And they're designed in such a way that the old dynamics can't easily infiltrate or exploit them again. One of the most fascinating developments is the rise of male only or male dominated physical and digital spaces that operate on explicit or implicit codes of conduct. Private gyms, workshops, co living arrangements, and even small communities are springing up where entry is by referral or invitation only. These aren't hateful enclaves, they're sanctuaries built on the simple principle that peace is non negotiable. Men gather to train, to build, to learn trades, to share knowledge about everything from mechanical repair to advanced investing strategies. No drama, no accusations, no walking on eggshells, just progress. And because trust is high within these groups, resources flow freely. Tools are lent without hesitation. Skills are taught without expectation of payment. Opportunities are shared immediately. This is brotherhood in action, the kind that civilization was originally built upon before it was systematically dismantled. At the same time, the digital equivalents are exploding. Discord servers, private forums, encrypted chat groups, and decentralized platforms host thousands upon thousands of men collaborating across borders. They exchange information on everything from tax optimization in different jurisdictions to off grid living setups, from high yield skill acquisition to emerging opportunities in blockchain and artificial intelligence. And these networks aren't advertised publicly for a reason. They've learned that openness invites disruption. Instead, they grow organically through trusted introductions. Women rarely gain access, not because of explicit bans in most cases, but because the culture and focus are unapologetically male centered. And the cost of entry, shared experience, aligned values, consistent contribution doesn't align with patterns observed over decades. This leads to a natural economic segregation that's already measurable. Men within these networks barter at favorable rates, extend credit with minimal risk assessment, and collaborate on ventures that generate real wealth. A skilled welder might trade services for programming work, which in turn gets exchanged for legal advice, all within a closed loop that compounds value rapidly. Outsiders, particularly those perceived as high risk due to past societal patterns, find themselves charged market premiums or simply turned away. It's not personal, it's practical. Risk management at scale. Now, contrast this with the mainstream economy women remain more tied to. Corporate structures vulnerable to automation, consumer driven industries reliant on discretionary spending, government programs funded by shrinking tax bases. These are the pillars many still depend on. As artificial intelligence advances at breakneck speed, entire job categories are evaporating. Administrative roles, content moderation, basic customer service, even creative fields like copywriting and graphic design are being absorbed by models that work 24/7 without salaries or drama. Men, already pivoting toward technical skills, entrepreneurial ventures, and location independent income, adapt faster because they have less emotional attachment to the old system and fewer obligations draining their resources. Single men, in particular, are proving remarkably resilient. Without the financial bleed of supporting partners or children in unfavorable arrangements, they accumulate capital at rates that compound dramatically over time. A modest income invested consistently, paired with minimalist living, creates wealth most coupled households struggle to match. Day trading, cryptocurrency staking, peer to peer lending within trusted networks, small business launches all become viable when you're not covering someone else's lifestyle inflation. Reports from financial platforms show single men in their 30s and 40s building portfolios that position them for early retirement or geographic arbitrage, while their married peers tread water on mortgages and family expenses. This wealth gap will only widen as demographic realities set in. With fertility rates collapsing across developed nations, pension systems and social safety nets face existential crises. These programs were designed assuming continuous population growth and a stable ratio of workers to retirees. When that ratio inverts, and it's already happening in countries like Japan and Italy, the promises made become mathematically impossible to keep. Younger generations will bear the burden through higher taxes, reduced benefits, or outright system collapse. Women who statistically live longer and rely more heavily on these systems in old age face the harshest outcomes unless they have substantial private wealth, which increasingly many do not. Men anticipate this. They're building parallel retirement strategies, offshore assets, physical precious metals, income generating skills that can't be automated away. Some purchase land in stable jurisdictions and develop self sustaining properties. Others create digital nomad lifestyles that minimize tax exposure while maximizing quality of life. The common thread? Independence from systems that have proven unreliable or hostile. Another layer to consider is the psychological transformation underway. Men who once measured worth through female approval or family provision now derive validation from mastery and brotherhood. The dopamine hits come from hitting new personal records in the gym, closing profitable trades, solving complex problems with peers, or simply enjoying uninterrupted peace. Relationships with women shift from necessity to optional luxury, and one with extremely high standards. When men do engage romantically, it's increasingly on terms that prioritize mutual respect, shared values, and clear boundaries. Many choose overseas partners who haven't been shaped by decades of cultural messaging that devalues masculinity. This isn't about superiority, it's about compatibility. Cultures that still celebrate family, femininity, and masculine strength offer dynamics that feel natural and reciprocal. Men report higher satisfaction, lower stress, and genuine partnership in these arrangements. Meanwhile, Western women expressing frustration about dating often describe pools of men who are either completely disengaged or demanding standards that mirror what women have enjoyed for decades. The irony isn't lost on observers. Social media amplifies these contrasts daily. Videos of women tearfully explaining unaffordable rent or groceries accumulate millions of views, often accompanied by comments from men suggesting they try the independence they championed. Former advocates of strong, independent womanhood now voice confusion about why men aren't lining up to help. The answer is simple. Men tried that path, found it led to exploitation and ingratitude, and chose a different route that actually works. The state attempts to fill the gap through expanded control, digital currencies to track spending, social credit systems to enforce behavior, online safety legislation that functions as censorship. But these measures primarily ensnare those most dependent on state infrastructure. Men building parallel systems operate outside these nets: cash trades, encrypted communications, physical community networks. They're not rebelling dramatically, they're quietly becoming ungovernable in ways that matter most. Look at China as a case study unfolding in real time. Strict social controls, economic slowdown, and gender imbalances create pressure cookers. Women there post emotional appeals about survival, while men increasingly focus on personal security and international options. Similar dynamics play out in the West, just with different cultural packaging. The restaurant example we touched on earlier deserves more depth because it's so tangible. Fine dining establishments that once thrived on anniversary celebrations, first dates, and courtship rituals now struggle to fill tables midweek. Chefs report simpler menus, smaller portions, and price increases to compensate for lost volume. The romantic dinner as cultural institution fades when one side stops initiating and the other lacks resources to sustain it independently. This cascades. Wine importers see declining sales, florists lose bouquet revenue, rideshare apps miss surge pricing from date nights. Entire ecosystems built around male investment in female attention contract. Gyms tell a similar story but with added layers. Beyond home setups, we're seeing micro gym franchises catering exclusively to men, small spaces with heavy iron, no mirrors, no classes, just serious training. These thrive while big chains lay off staff and close locations. The equipment manufacturers adapt by selling more direct to consumer home packages. Supplement companies shift marketing from aesthetic appeal to performance and health optimization for mature audiences. Even entertainment transforms. Streaming platforms chase female viewers with certain types of content, while male audiences migrate to independent creators offering unfiltered discussion. Podcast networks built around men's issues grow exponentially. Books on stoicism, financial independence, and male psychology dominate certain bestseller lists. The cultural output reflects the audience driving demand, and that audience is increasingly male and self directed. As we approach the latter half of this decade, the convergence of artificial intelligence, demographic collapse, and economic reconfiguration creates a perfect storm. Men positioned for this transition, skilled, mobile, networked, unencumbered, will navigate it with relative ease. Those still waiting for rescue or demanding other sacrifice for their comfort will find fewer options. This isn't tragedy, it's consequence meeting preparation. Men were told for generations they weren't needed except as utility providers. They adapted by becoming self sufficient and redirecting utility toward themselves and worthy circles. The peace found in this realignment proves addictive. Why return to dysfunction when equilibrium feels this good? The bear analogy continues to resonate because it crystallized the truth. When you declare an entire group more dangerous than wild animals. Don't be surprised when that group declines protective duties. Men extend protection now only where it's appreciated and reciprocated toward brothers, toward communities that value them, toward partners who choose partnership over extraction. All roads lead here because the old path proved unsustainable. Men walking away isn't the end of civilization. It's the foundation of something more honest, more resilient, and ultimately more sustainable. The future belongs to those who build rather than demand, who adapt rather than resist reality, who choose peace over perpetual conflict. Let's push this narrative further, because what we're witnessing isn't merely a temporary reaction or a phase that society will snap out of. It's the emergence of a fundamentally new social contract, one written by men who have collectively decided that the old terms were not just unfair, but actively destructive. This new contract is simple: value for value, respect for respect, peace as the default state rather than the exception. No hidden clauses, no retroactive penalties, no endless extraction disguised as entitlement. Men are enforcing this contract not through laws or public campaigns, but through the quiet power of choice, where they spend their time, their money, their energy, their attention. And once you understand how powerful that choice truly is, you realize why there's no realistic path back to the way things were. Consider the sheer scale of male economic disengagement. Men have historically been the primary drivers of taxable labor, infrastructure development, innovation in high risk fields, and discretionary spending on experiences that prop up entire industries. When a critical mass of men shifts from provider for others to provider for self and trusted circle, the downstream effects are seismic. Governments feel it first in declining revenue growth despite rising nominal GDP figures. Programs that expanded on the assumption of endless male productivity now face hard choices: cut benefits, raise taxes on the remaining contributors, or print currency and accelerate inflation. All three options disproportionately impact those most reliant on state transfers and consumer credit, demographics that skew heavily female in many Western nations. Corporate America and Europe are waking up to this too. Diversity initiatives that once prioritized gender balance now confront retention and performance realities. Fields like tech, engineering, finance, and trades remain stubbornly male dominated, not because of gatekeeping, but because men continue entering them while female participation plateaus or declines in many cases. When companies push aggressive quotas, they often discover that the talent pool doesn't expand magically, leading to lowered standards, internal resentment, and eventual backlash. Meanwhile, men quietly build or join startups, decentralized projects, and independent contracting networks where competence is the only currency that matters. These ventures thrive on merit, long hours when needed, and loyalty to the mission rather than to ideology. The housing market tells a similar story. Single men, living minimally and saving aggressively, increasingly outbid coupled households or single women for properties in desirable areas. They don't need large homes, good school districts, or multiple bedrooms. A modest, efficient space, often paid in cash or with massive down payments, suffices. This cash buyer advantage grows as interest rates fluctuate and traditional mortgages become harder to service for dual income no kids or single income households carrying lifestyle debt. Real estate agents report a rising segment of male clients purchasing rural acreage, fixer uppers for off grid conversion, or urban microcondos optimized for remote work and minimal upkeep. These buyers aren't flipping, they're establishing long term bases designed for independence. Food production and supply chains feel the shift as well. Industrial agriculture and processed food giants target female consumers heavily because women control the majority of grocery dollars. But when men detach from household provisioning, they often pivot to bulk buying, hunting, fishing, gardening, or direct from producer relationships. Community supported agriculture programs, local butcher co ops, and foraging groups see surging male participation. This reduces demand for branded, convenience oriented products while boosting smaller, resilient supply networks. Large corporations respond with price hikes or shrinkflation, further squeezing consumers still operating in the old paradigm. Health and wellness industries adapt too. Supplement companies that once marketed vanity driven products to mixed audiences now tailor lines toward male performance, longevity, and recovery. Testosterone optimization, nootropic stacks, and functional fitness protocols dominate advertising spend. Mental health platforms built around traditional therapy models struggle while Stoic philosophy apps, men's circles, and peer support networks explode. Men seek solutions that empower rather than pathologize, that build resilience rather than encourage victimhood narratives. Education reflects the divergence most starkly among younger generations. Boys, long disadvantaged in feminized school systems that penalize natural energy and competition, increasingly opt out of traditional university paths. Trade schools, apprenticeships, online certifications, and self directed learning boom. The value proposition of six-figure debt for degrees with uncertain ROI collapses when marriage and family formation are no longer primary motivators. Girls continue pursuing higher education at higher rates, but face saturated fields, credential inflation, and repayment burdens without the historical male partner buffer. The gender degree gap widens, but the income and autonomy gap may reverse over time as trades and tech skills command premium wages. Travel and leisure transform alongside everything else. Resorts, cruise lines, and tourism boards that marketed heavily to couples or girls' trips now pivot messaging. Adventure travel, extreme sports, and skill building retreats draw male groups willing to spend on experiences that build bonds and competence. Solo male travel surges, backpacking through Southeast Asia, working remotely from Latin America, exploring Eastern Europe. These men contribute significantly to local economies abroad while reducing spending at home. Domestic tourism in Western countries shifts toward family oriented or budget options as discretionary couple spending dries up. Even charity and philanthropy change. Men historically donated through institutional channels or workplace campaigns. Now, direct giving within trusted networks dominates. Helping a brother start a business, funding a friend's medical need, supporting a local tradesman hit by hardship. Large NGOs and foundations that relied on broad based male generosity see declines, forcing programmatic cuts or aggressive fundraising that yields diminishing returns. The psychological freedom men report from this realignment cannot be overstated. Decades of conditioning to be stoic yet emotionally available on demand, strong yet never intimidating, ambitious yet always deferential, created cognitive dissonance that manifested as stress, addiction, suicide. Removing the expectation to perform these contradictions unlocks profound clarity. Men describe it as finally breathing after years underwater. Energy once spent scanning for offenses, managing perceptions, anticipating accusations, now fuels creation, exploration, mastery. The internal narrative shifts from how do I measure up for others to how do I build the life that aligns with my values? This freedom manifests physically too. Testosterone levels rise with consistent training, quality sleep, purpose driven days. Body composition improves as nutrition becomes fuel rather than comfort. Risk tolerance increases when there's no external party to lose. Innovation flourishes when failure doesn't threaten family stability. Men take calculated swings, launching businesses, relocating countries, pursuing passions, because the downside is personal rather than catastrophic to dependence. Women navigating this new landscape often express bewilderment or anger, but the root cause traces back to choices made collectively over generations. The bargain offered was, we'll handle it ourselves. We don't need you. In fact, your involvement is often harmful. Men accepted the terms, adapted, and discovered they thrive under them. Attempts to renegotiate now, after the adaptation is complete, face the reality that trust, once broken systematically, rebuilds slowly, if at all. Some women adapt successfully, learning skills, building networks, embracing minimalism, seeking genuine partnership rather than extraction. These women often find willing partners among men who value reciprocity. But the majority pattern, expecting rescue while rejecting responsibility, meets indifference. Men extend help where it's earned, not where it's demanded. The future crystallizes into parallel societies. One dynamic, merit based, resilient, male driven, the other stagnant, entitlement based, fragile, state dependent. Convergence becomes unlikely without fundamental attitude shifts that current trends suggest aren't coming. Men walking away isn't destruction, it's reconstruction on firmer ground. The old structure was built on male sacrifice, assumed perpetual. When the sacrifice withdrew, the flaws became visible. What's rising in its place prioritizes truth, competence, brotherhood, peace. All roads lead here because reality rewards adaptation. Men adapted. The peace they found proves the path correct. No amount of appeals, shaming, or legislation changes observable outcomes. The walk away is complete, the new building begun, the future shaped by those who chose self respect over self erasure. Let's bring this all the way home because the full picture only becomes clear when we zoom out and look at the long arc of history repeating itself in a modern context. Societies have always risen and fallen on the strength of their social contracts, particularly the one between men and women. When that contract is balanced with mutual respect, clear roles, and reciprocal value, civilizations flourish. Families form easily. Children are raised in stability. Economies expand because men build and innovate with purpose, and women nurture and sustain the home front. But when the contract breaks, when one side systematically devalues or punishes the other while still expecting the benefits of their labor and protection, the foundation cracks. What we're living through right now is the visible cracking of that foundation across the developed world. And the most adaptive group, men, are not waiting around for the collapse. They're already on the other side, laying new groundwork. History gives us plenty of precedents. Look at Rome in its declining centuries. As traditional family structures eroded, birth rates fell, men withdrew from marriage, and the state stepped in with bread and circuses to placate the masses. Eventually, the productive class shrank. The military weakened because citizens no longer saw the point in defending a system that offered them little, and external pressures finished the job. We're not at barbarian gates yet, but the parallels are striking. Declining fertility, state overreach to compensate, productive men redirecting effort away from a system that treats them as disposable utilities. The difference today is technology. Men aren't retreating to monasteries or frontier wilderness in isolation. They're connecting globally, sharing knowledge instantly, building wealth digitally, and creating networks that no central authority can easily dismantle. This technological edge makes the current walkaway uniquely powerful. A man in his 30s with a laptop, a solid skill set, and a trusted network can generate income from anywhere, protect his assets through decentralized finance, communicate securely outside big tech surveillance, and live well in lower cost jurisdictions if he chooses. He doesn't need permission, a corporate ladder, or a traditional family structure to thrive. Compare that to previous eras where disengagement meant poverty or monastic vows. Today, disengagement means freedom, wealth accumulation, and peace. That's why the trend accelerates rather than plateaus. The psychological and spiritual dimension deserves more attention too. Many men describe the shift as a genuine awakening. After years of being told their natural drives were toxic, their strength was threatening, their provision was expected rather than appreciated, they finally asked the simple question: what if I just stop? What if I redirect all that energy inward and toward people who actually value it? The answer surprised even them. Life didn't become empty, it became full, full of purpose discovered through mastery, full of camaraderie built on shared struggle and triumph, full of quiet evenings without arguments or ultimatums. Many report deeper sleep, clearer thinking, higher natural motivation. The constant background hum of tension disappears. This isn't suppression of natural desires either. For men who still want companionship, the options remain, but on radically better terms. Overseas partnerships, selective dating with strict boundaries, or simply enjoying female company without commitment all become viable when you're not operating from scarcity or societal pressure. The power dynamic flips when one side no longer needs the arrangement to survive or thrive. Desperation breeds poor choices. Abundance breeds discernment. Younger generations absorb these lessons early. Boys growing up today watch their fathers, uncles, older brothers navigate divorce courts, false accusations, or endless criticism and decide consciously to avoid those paths. They see the peace that comes from solitude and self reliance and choose it proactively rather than as a reaction to pain. Schools may still favor girls in grading and discipline. Media may still portray men as buffoons or villains, but the message getting through is different. You don't have to play this game, you can build your own. The economic implications over the next decade will be staggering. As baby boomers retire and fertility remains low, the worker to retiree ratio deteriorates further. Social security systems in the US, Europe, Japan strain under the weight. Promises made decades ago become impossible to keep without massive tax increases or benefit cuts. Who pays the bulk of those taxes historically? Working age men. Who relies more heavily on those benefits in old age? Women, due to longer lifespans and lower lifetime savings rates. The math becomes brutal. Men, already minimizing tax exposure through independent work, geographic arbitrage, or asset protection, feel less incentive to subsidize a system that offered them little in return. Crypto and decentralized finance play a huge role here. These tools allow men to store and grow wealth outside traditional banking systems that can be seized or inflated away. Staking, yield farming, peer to peer lending within trusted networks all generate returns without feeding the legacy financial beast. As central banks push digital currencies with programmable controls, the contrast sharpens. One system tracks every transaction and restricts based on behavior. The other preserves privacy and autonomy. Guess which one appeals to men who've already experienced systemic bias? Physical preparation runs parallel. Land ownership in rural areas spikes among single men. Not huge estates, but functional acreage with water access, arable soil, defensible perimeters. Skills like welding, mechanics, small scale farming, first aid all see renewed interest, not out of paranoia, but practical risk management. When trust in institutions erodes, self reliance becomes the rational choice. Women adapting successfully to this reality stand out precisely because they reject entitlement narratives. They learn trades, build savings habits, prioritize fitness and practical skills, seek genuine partnership rather than transactional arrangements. These women often thrive and find high quality partners because they operate from the same abundance mindset. But they're the exception proving the rule. The broader pattern, demanding male return while offering nothing new in exchange, meets consistent rejection. Attempts to force re engagement through policy or culture wars largely backfire. Laws increasing male obligations in family court push more men toward avoidance altogether. Media campaigns shaming male disengagement highlight the problem rather than solve it, reinforcing the decision to stay away. Economic incentives meant to boost birth rates, like baby bonuses or parental leave expansions, fail when the core trust issue remains unaddressed. The endpoint isn't dystopian separation or endless conflict, it's quiet divergence. Two paths forward: one built on individual responsibility, merit, brotherhood, and peaceful separation from dysfunction, the other clinging to failing structures, demanding collective sacrifice to maintain them. Men have chosen the first path en masse, and the comfort found there makes return increasingly unthinkable. This is why all roads lead to men walking away. Not because men hate women or society, but because they finally love themselves enough to stop accepting bad deals. Peace earned through boundaries beats chaos endured through obligation. Freedom discovered through solitude outshines captivity disguised as partnership. Wealth built through focus surpasses resources drained through extraction. The walkaway is complete for millions already. Millions more join daily as they witness the contrast: struggle and demands on one side, calm and abundance on the other. No grand announcement needed, no permission required. Just consistent, quiet choice repeated across continents and generations. The future belongs to those who build sustainable systems on honest terms. Men are building. The rest adapts or faces the consequences of decades of broken promises. That's the full story, laid out plainly. A generational shift driven by simple cause and effect. Actions met consequences. Demands met boundaries. Exploitation met withdrawal. The result? Men thriving in ways previous generations couldn't imagine, while the old paradigm crumbles under its own weight. What did you think about everything we covered here today? Do you agree with the observations or do you see it differently? Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. I read them all and love hearing your perspectives. Like the video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.